Welcome back to the hashtag I Be My Everywhere show. I have the honor and pleasure of speaking with Jacob Anderson today. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Josh.
Oh, thank you. No, you're so supportive of the hashtag I Be My Everywhere series. Really appreciate all the energy you have for the platform and things you do for the community. Really today, all I really want to learn a little bit about you. I think a lot of people are curious to hear about your story, and love to hear. Why don't you share the story with us? How do you get started with IBMI?
Yeah, so it started off 2019. I was hauling fuel as a truck driver, and so the COVID-19 pandemic came down, and as part of an initiative here in Michigan, they launched something called the Futures for Frontliners program, where you can get a grant for an associate's degree if you were a frontline worker during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd always had interest in computer science, and I learned QBasic in high school. And so I said, well, if I'm going to go for computer science. And so ended up working through the program there. And part of the program there was a couple mastering IBMI courses and a couple of RPG courses. And so I got introduced to the language and the platform that way. And then our teacher, Shar Parker, took us to MyTech here in Michigan. I think it was 2023. And I was able to go there, and we got to the hotel the night before, and I did some research on the people who would be speaking there, and I didn't anticipate bumping into any of them in the hotel. And I turned around, and there was a bunch of people who I, had only read about, and they were all available there to speak with. And I started speaking with Simon Hutchinson there of RPGGM.com fame, and ended up talking with him the whole night and just having a really great time. He told me everything from his RPG experiences to getting stalked by lions in the Serengeti, I think it was, and it was a really great experience. And so I probably could have gone any way in my career, with the languages I had learned. But after that experience, I was pretty committed to working with IBMI and RPG just because the community was so great. And so that's kind of how I got started.
That's an amazing story, but I think the key thing, you started off as a truck driver.
Yeah.
And did you see a future in the truck driving, or you're always had your sights on doing something else?
Well, I was just planning on truck driving for the rest of my days, pretty much. Once there was an opportunity to actually work in tech, and I had to take it because it's basically been my dream for a long time, but just never felt like it would happen. And sometimes an opportunity knocks and you got to take it. So
That's amazing. A question for you is that, one of the things that I've heard about is within the IBMI space and the challenges that we have is that the IBM doesn't have necessarily such a presence in the schools. And listening to your stories, that jumped right out at me, that the way you got introduced and, the love and the passion for IBMI really started because of the fact that you started in school.
yeah.
Is that if you didn't have that in school, would you have ever been able to be introduced to IBMI? What would have happened?
I really don't think so. It would probably still be a very well kept secret to me. And I was just fortunate enough I'm on very close to the border of Ottawa County and Muskegon County here in Michigan. And if I was a little further south in Ottawa County, because the grant pays for in-county or in-district school, I probably would have never heard of IBMI. So by virtue of just being north of this Ottawa County line, I was actually introduced to IBMI. So that's how much of a chance encounter it actually was. So yeah.
I think that's a really relevant point, because I think that we always talk about from the IBMI community is that how are we going to get the developers, how we introducing the next generation. And I think the proof is in the pudding, is the investment in the schools is really how you got here. And then can you tell us a little bit more about how what was your relationship with Simon, and how did you get how that all started? It sounds like amazing.
Well, gosh, yeah. So I think I had gone to another event, and I didn't do any research. I'd never gone to a tech conference before, and so I didn't really know what to expect. And so I ended up feeling like I didn't get out of it what I could have. And I did a lot of soul searching, because I really had to ask myself, why did I feel like this didn't go very well? And that's when I was like, you went there without any knowledge of any of these people. And, so you've got this MyTech experience here. Let's actually read up on these people, what they're doing, what they're contributing to the platform and the language, so maybe you won't feel like you can't approach these people and talk to these people, not that anybody was not friendly or anything like that, but just feeling out of my depth. So I did some research on Simon, and I think Marina was speaking there, and just did the best I could. And I said, I'm going to count a success is going here and making a positive impression, because I think that was another reason I felt like the first conference didn't go well, is I didn't really have a metric for what I wanted out of it, And so I said, let's go with the intent to just make a positive impression. And I think that was an achievable goal. And I think I achieved it. And so it ended up being a really, really great experience. But I had to kind of reorient myself to what exactly I wanted to get out of it. Yeah.
No, Ed, I think that's very insightful. I think with all events, we have to go in with a purpose, or a specific reason. And you saw the difference. You're even sharing it. Like the difference between the first event versus the second event are palpable. You know the difference, because that, like, even that 20 minutes of research makes such a difference. One of the other things that you mentioned to me before this is that you've worked with Simon like continuously. Just that first encounter, you built a relationship with him. Maybe you share a little bit what that relationship looks like and how that blossomed.
Well, gosh, yeah. I think I showed enthusiasm there at MyTech. And I think he saw something in that, that I was actually enthusiastic about the platform. I'm trying to understand all the different moving parts, all the different who's. I think he saw that I was actually trying. And so I was also very willing to take in all the information that he had. At first, it's very hard for me to speak extemporaneously on RPG and things of that nature, just having the schooling and not so much any of the real world experience. And so I think I was just ready to absorb all the information that he had, which was all great information. And so I think it was actually just trying to be an active listener that got him interested in mentoring me. And so now every month or so, we meet up for a one-to-one meeting, and sometimes there's other people there, and he just checks in with me and makes sure things are going well with me. He answers any RPG related questions that I have. He gives me suggestions. He's helping me get my website that I'm working on up to snuff, but it's not launched yet.
Working on a website?
Yeah. It's hopefully to help people kind of expose RPG to the web. To me, I didn't find a lot of great resources out there to do that, at least on a PHP stored procedure level is kind of where I started. I learned about that on the job, and I was like, well, I didn't know anything about stored procedures, PHP, and RPG. I didn't know you could connect the three. And so I didn't see much about it out there. And so I was like, well, I'm going to kind of create a website, so people can kind of get a taste of this. So it's not such a mystery. Hopefully it's out there in the wild now and people can kind of utilize it how they need to. So.
Oh, yeah. That's so nice. That's exciting. When do you think that's going to be up and running?
Gosh, I hope in the next couple months. I've got the pages up, but there's really some things that I just need to kind of flesh out. So I've got two pages up right now. One is just setting up your environment to do PHP with IBMI, and then the other is actually kind of a full stack application where it's basically a bank transaction application where you make the request on the web page. It calls an SQL stored procedure, which then calls an RPG stored procedure, which then processes the information, returns information to the SQL stored procedure, which then gets presented back on the web page. So it's mostly done. I do have to make some tweaks. So hopefully, to answer your question, it'll probably be ready in the next month or two, hopefully. So
that's exciting. Good for you. And where do you see the future for IBMI? Where do you see it going?
Yeah. I mean, it's said that they've got plans quite a bit in the future. I think I've heard places that there's no intent to stop running on the IBMI. And, with so many legacy systems being built on this, I mean, it would be very, very difficult to totally get off them for a lot of these companies. So to me, I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think you're going to see more people interfacing with the IBMI with modern technologies. My company right now is running on a Power Server, and all their data for our company portal where customers can make purchases, that's all run on a Power Server. And so, they're the best servers in the world with the best database DB2 in the world. So I can't see a good reason to get off them, even if other people have different opinions on that. I think some people find out the hard way that it's probably not best to get off the IBMI. So yeah.
It takes a lot of time and effort to get off it, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and you find out the project's failed. Aside from just from that, like, where do you see the platform going? I mean, as it evolves, I mean, obviously, as we're seeing the AI world opening up, but more strategically is the open source world. And as you are focusing on open source and having an open source background, what do you see from that perspective?
Gosh, well, you've got some really great things from Liam Allen with, I think it's MAPAPI it's called, and obviously his VS Code extension, Code for I. So those are two great open source solutions that Liam has come up with. And then down the pipeline, we've got the RPG Generative AI project. And that's actually coming along pretty well from what I understand. And so I think in the future, we're going to see, an IBM proprietary AI that is going to be able to describe what the RPG code is doing. It's going to be able to write new RPG code. And I think it's going to be able to convert old RPG code into free format RPG code. And that's so exciting. I think that's the next big thing on the horizon.
Yeah. I mean, it's super important. When we talk to shops, I talk to shops all the time, and they're saying to me like, "Oh yeah, our stuff's written in RPG too." And I mean, obviously, that's the beautiful thing about the platform is the fact that it's able to run these applications that have been built in the 80s and to this day are able to continue to converse with the PHPs, the nodes, and the RPG ILEs of the world at the same time. Also, that monolithic structure needs to be changed. And that is a really, really exciting piece of the world as we're moving forward with that project. Then regarding the community specifically, I think that just your story alone with Simon and others is just a shining example of the power of the community. But what else would you say about it in general?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's extremely welcoming. And the beautiful part is that a lot of times you don't have to go digging for information. There are people who are trying to work on it and put it out there themselves. And that's the beauty of it. And sometimes you'll go to a conference and you'll get answers to questions that you didn't even know you needed to ask yet. And so I think the community is one of the biggest parts for me is just, I like being involved with these wonderful people in this community. And I don't think there's another language or platform that has a community like this. I really can't say enough good things about it. I think I've seen people who are introduced to the platform and, they're not necessarily thrilled at what they see with the green screen and stuff like that. And so they're kind of going, well, what the heck are we doing here? And it's kind of interesting to see after working with it for a while, the perspective change. You've got the built-in database functionality and so many other features. And I think they start to come around and they go, hey, this is actually pretty robust. And maybe my first pass assessment of this operating system was kind of a little harsh, because it does so much. And, it's such a, it's such a legendary platform that it's easy to estimate just if you're looking at it as a green screen environment, and that's all it is. But it's really so much more.
It sounds like that when you first got introduced to it, it wasn't as exciting. It wasn't super exciting to you. But what was that breaking point where you realized like, hey, this is a platform I want to invest my time in, that I want to showcase to the world why I love this thing so much. What made that change?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I personally like working with the data. I think that's my favorite part. I maybe like that better than designing the front end or anything like that. I really like working with the data. And when you see how easy it is for RPG to, just you name the file that you want to use up at the top. You've got access to all the different fields in the file as you work through it. As somebody who likes to work with the data, it's like, man, this is really great. I don't have to do any database connectivity. I don't have to do any additional setup, because that's one of the big things with almost anything else is there's a lot of setup and it's not always clear how to get that going. And that's once again why I really just wanted to write an article on how to call SQL stored procedures from PHP and call an RPG program. I had to write a whole different article on how to even get that all set up so you could actually, go through the process of the second article, which is really the one I wanted to write. And so with RPG, it's just like, gosh, I just name the file and I'm ready to go. And so that was the big moment for me, just seeing how easy it was to start working with the data pretty early on in school. Yeah. We started working with read loops pretty early on in the RPG curriculum. And so, but it didn't, I understood it at the time, but it didn't hit me until I started working with other languages, so it was sometime in my schooling where I realized, like, man, this is a lot of headache to set up, communicating with the database with other languages when it's just a native built-in thing with RPG, and it just makes everything so much more straightforward. And so I think, it was probably later in schooling when I made that connection.
One last thing for you is that, are there any things you want to share with the community, like maybe a message that you want to share?
Yeah, RPG is here to stay. IBMI is here to stay, and it's an incredible platform. And if you're looking for a community of people and a very steady in-demand sort of career, the IBMI and RPG are a great choice for anybody who's looking for those things.
Love it. Love it, Jacob. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining the #IBMI Everywhere show. If anyone else wants to join, feel free to reach out to me. You know where to find me. And thank you so much, and talk to you all soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Josh.